Welcome back. As Eric Ham told us, President Trump is still holding on to the possibility of a summit with North Korea after the arrangements with Kim Jung Un fell apart. We spoke with DeWardric Mcneal. He's an expert on Asia who served in the Department of Defense under the Obama administration. He's currently the managing director and senior policy analyst at Longview Global. Was Mr. Trump overly ambitious in trying to negotiate with North Korea in such a short period of time?
Well, I think you have a situation here where perhaps this was an attempt to do something that had never been done before, which, as you know, our president is certainly looking for ways to distinguish himself from his predecessors. And so this, I think, was a bit of a Hail Mary pass, and I think we see how it ended. Look, the question that I think many of us are asking is, what do we make of this and where do we go from here? And some people see this as a win for John Bolton and some of the hardliners in the administration who never really trusted that the North Koreans were prepared to give up their nuclear weapons, certainly without conditions. Others say the Chinese are the big winners here, because what this will do, and you hinted at this, was move this back into a more traditional diplomatic track at a much lower level, at a much slower pace, and allows for China, which has been very concerned that this would move forward without Chinese participation, will allow for the Chinese to really continue to influence the North Koreans. So, but look, I think there are some losers here. We talked about the winners, but Moon Jae-in and Mike Pompeo, I think, certainly can be seen as some of the potential losers here. Moon Jae-in, as you know, put a lot of political and diplomatic capital into moving this into a diplomatic track, because he was very concerned that there was going to be a military strike in North Korea. I suspect he may have overplayed his hands. Perhaps he may have been deceived by Kim Jung Un, or a little bit of both. And then, of course, Mike Pompeo, who met twice and tried to really move the Dow forward, I think perhaps may lose a little momentum to John Bolton and some of the hardliners.
And you mentioned China there, which of course raises the possibility of China now further flexing its muscles in the region. And you also talked about South Korean President Moon Jae-in, who's been instrumental in negotiating with North Korea. I mean, what's next for diplomatic talks between the two Koreas, in your estimation?
Well, look, I think for Moon Jae-in, he is committed to diplomacy. I think he is looking for a way to get this back on track. And to the President Trump, that is, to his credit, he did not close the door completely to diplomacy. There's already talk around town of perhaps a fall redo for the talks. So I think we'll see efforts by Moon Jae-in to really keep this in a diplomatic track. I think for China, certainly the Chinese will continue to flex their muscle. They want to see things in the region that I think for the balance of what had been discussed for Singapore, the Chinese interests were really not being considered. And I think we saw the Chinese really react in a way that caught us off guard, particularly that second meeting where Kim went to Dalian, a port city in northeastern China, and spent 2 days with the Chinese. And certainly without question, President Xi of China made it clear that perhaps the North Koreans should be a little bit more suspect about how they move forward with the Americans. And then, of course, soon after that, we had John Bolton and then Vice President Pence making statements about the Libya model, which only reinforces the Chinese comments to the North Koreans to be a...
And that's DeWardric Mcneal, an expert on Asia, talking to me earlier.